Shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahar Kadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS who have taught us this word and teach us this word today. And I want to give a salutation unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is the brother Yatazakbah with the GMS Nebraska camp. And in this lesson, what I want to get into is how the Lord is putting the leaders of this earth into a warlike mindset. You know, as the scriptures say in Proverbs 21:1, it says, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. And we understand that it's a part of the Lord's will and a part of his movie that World War III would come about, and very soon. But World War III won't just come out of thin air. There's going to be preparations that's made leading up to it, alliances that's made. There's going to be, wars that lead up to the major war that we read about of Armageddon and things of the sort. All the troops going to the valley of Jehoshaphat. These things, they're things that have to happen leading up to it. And, I just want to go into a couple things, a couple articles, something I was looking up, just showing the different provisions that's being made and, how the state of the world is slowly but surely, and slowly is the wrong word to use as of late, but the world is surely going into, World War III. So let's grab one more scripture and then we'll get into this first article, which is Revelation chapter 11, verse 14, which says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And that word woe means destruction. So we've had World War II, we had World War I, and we had World War II. It says the third woe cometh quickly. So World War III is soon to come, which is why I said, to say slowly but surely is the wrong phrase to use, because these prophecies are just going back to back to back, especially since Trump has been in office. So speaking of Trump, I want to go to this first article I have from NBCnews.com, which says Trump signs executive order rebranding Defense Department as Department of War. It says let's go ahead and get into it. From September 5th. It says President Donald Trump signed an executive order Friday rebranding the Department of Defense as the Department of War, a more bellicose alternative that echoes the agency's 18th century name. And that word bellicose, when you look it up, it's demonstrating aggression and willingness to fight, belligerent, and this is the mindset that Trump is in. I believe they're going to talk about it in this article, if I'm not mistaken, but, he just won a Nobel Peace Prize. He's championing himself as, this president that's bringing about peace and stopping certain wars, yet he's gung-ho. We're going to read about it as we get into the article. It says, I think it sends a message of victory. I think it sends really a message of strength. We're very strong. We're much stronger than anyone would really understand, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office after signing the order. Trump had signaled during his second term an interest in changing the name to the original version from 1789, criticizing the Defense Department name as not fully reflective of its priority, winning wars. He told reporters Friday that he finalized the decision after talking about it for months, and asserted the original name was only changed because the government at the time went woke. But this is Esau just showing his horns, because the scriptures say that, one of Esau's blessings is the sword. And what that's speaking about is, that sword is not a literal sword. A sword is representative of a gun, of, military strength, and as we see, the U.S. has the strongest military in the world. Right behind it, you have Russia, which are both Edomites, so that's showing Esau's gift of the sword, with these different missiles they have, their army vehicles, and it's in Esau's spirit to fight, to love blood, so Trump can't help it. Let's go ahead and get into it. It says, We won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything before that and in between. They haven't won everything. You got the Vietnam War. The Americans had to run home in that war. It says, and then we decided to go woke and we changed the name to Department of Defense, Trump said. So we're going Department of War. So let's see, let me scroll down to a good spot. It says, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has for months pushed for reverting to the original name, arguing it would help cement a warrior ethos in the military. And you see, just the mindset that the Lord is putting these Edomites in. Let's just look at Trump, for example. Ever since he came into office, he's not trying to look what he's doing within the country. First he sent ICE to come after the Northern Kingdom, with all these deportations, where they're focusing on Israel. They're focusing on the Latino, and they're focusing on the Latin tribes primarily. And then after that, what is he doing? He's sending the National Guard to go into Jake hoods. He's focusing on the Southern Kingdom. He's bringing about Jacob's trouble. But he's not just beating around the bush. He's being very clear, very he's all steam ahead with it, full steam ahead with it. And that's just the spirit that that the Lord put Trump in. But just to stay on topic, a warlike mindset is being brought about, and we see that with Trump and his cabinet, where they're like, nah, we want to put on a more warrior-like, image. We don't want to seem like we're just on the defensive. We want people to know that we're willing to fight, It's like, let me walk down this way. So it says Trump's order does not formally rename the Department of Defense, a move that will require a congressional approval. It's like, let me cross the street real fast. It's a busy street. It's gonna have a lot of cars, so. But it says Trump's order does not formally rename the Department of Defense, a move that will require congressional approval. Instead, it makes the Department of War the secondary title and authorizes Hegseth to use titles like Secretary of War and Department of War in official correspondence and public communications. So the thing is, it's not just a focus on the name in and of itself. Whatever they name it, that is what it is. But the fact that this is even something that's in talks it's a huge show of the mindset of Trump. It's a huge show of, what kind of spirit they in. It says to further cement the rebrand, Trump's order requires all executive departments and agencies to recognize and accommodate these secondary titles in internal and external communications. So let's see. I thought I had a different article that was talking about more. This article was pretty short. So I want to try to look real fast. Hopefully I can find something. But as I'm looking, I will say, within the other article I was reading, they mentioned how Trump, he won a Nobel Peace Prize and all that. He was, talking about peace with, between Russia and Ukraine and all that. But at the same time, Russia's not listening to that. Russia came and talked to Trump, sat down with him. They talked about peace agreements, and they couldn't come to no conclusion. So Putin went right back home, and now he's talking to the leaders of North Korea. Now he's talking to, U.S. Enemies. And we see that right after Putin talked to Trump, there was a further escalation in the war between Russia and Ukraine. So on the flip side, as you have Trump in a warlike mindset, the scriptures say that what? Let's go to Ezekiel 38. And we'll go to verse 2, which says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Now Gog is speaking about Russia, and it says and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O God, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. And so what's that speaking about, putting hooks into Gog's jaws? That's bringing Russia back into a Soviet Union-like mindset, which is showing that they're going to be in a warlike mindset as well. And we see that taking place in Russia's actions led by Putin, to where what's going on? They want the land of Ukraine. Why do they want the land of Ukraine? Because that land was once a part of Russia when it was the Soviet Union. So that right there is showing, is showing the scripture being brought to light. But amongst that, there's no peace talk that Russia, wants to have, because if they come to some type of peace agreement, Ukraine wants to be NATO aligned, which means that if Russia gives up this fight, then he's giving up that land to his enemies. And Putin's like, nah, I want this land. And there's no type of peace, there's no type of agreement that's gonna be made, because that's the spirit that the Lord got them in. He put hooks in their jaws. It says, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Now, this is going to be even more apparent as these different wars around the world ramp up. It's like I just want to get past that lawnmower. But as I was saying, we're going to see even more as these different wars around the world ramp up. Because, the scriptures say that, God is going to be a guard unto these different nations. And their names, as a matter of fact, we was just in that precept. Let's go back to it. In verse 5, it says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. So Persia speaking about, the Iranians or the modern day Persians. Ethiopia and Libya are these African nations. It says all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. And that's speaking about Turkey. It says, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So the Lord is going to put a spirit into the Russians to be a guard unto these different nations. And that's why, we see with everything going on between Israel and Iran, and by extension, America and Iran, eventually Russia is going to jump in, because it's prophesied, the will of the Lord is going to come to pass, that Russia is going to be a guard unto Iran, but we're going to get to, as a matter of fact, it says all his bands and many people with thee, which means that there's going to be other countries as well that's not named here that Russia is going to be a guard unto. And we see the example with this going on right now, where you have America in this little war with Venezuela. Now, after America has, destroyed, has bombed that Venezuelan ship, what we see going on right now is that Venezuela and Russia are in talks that Russia is going to send weapons to Venezuela to help them in their fight against the U.S. That's Russia, being that guard. So we see like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the Lord is putting a warlike mindset in these leaders of the world. There is no talk of peace. There is no dying things down. Now, you may see ceasefires and, different agreements being made between countries, but they only hold up for so long. There were so many ceasefires that happened between Israel and, Hamas, or Israel and these different, militant groups in Gaza. But at the end of the day, they all fell through, because, this is the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. And the Lord is gonna make these places fight against each other. And I did find another article. I don't. This isn't the one that I had originally, but in this article it gives a little bit more on what Trump was speaking about with his renaming the Department of Defense. And in it, he has a quote where he says, "It has to do with winning." The president added, "We should have won every war. We could have won every war, but we really chose to be very politically correct or woke." So that's, giving more details to that whole woke comment that he made. And he did acknowledge that they have lost certain wars, or, they had the opportunity to win wars, and they chose peace. They chose to be politically correct, and that's showing, based off of his words, that's showing that diplomacy. He's gonna value winning a war over diplomacy, and he's willing to do that by strength. Because it says, let me see. I want to see if it says it here in this article. Let me see. Yep, here we go right here. It says, Hegseth pledged the War Department is going to fight decisively, not endless conflicts. It's going to fight to win, not to lose. We're going to go on offense, not just defense. Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. A violent effect, not politically correct. He's rhyming and shit, but it shows, he says we're going to raise up warriors, not just defenders. So that's showing like, we're not going in this whole diplomacy route no more. We're not trying to make peace. We're trying to win. And we're going to do that because right before that, they said that it says we have the strongest military in the world. We have the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest men. New factories of equipment by far. There's nobody to even compete. And they're going to be flexing them muscles. They're going to be flexing their sword. So, let's see. That's it from that. That's all I wanted from there. And we talked about, Russia. Well, actually, no, we're not done talking about Russia, because we mentioned how Russia is coming to the aid of Venezuela. But, let's talk more about, Russia and Iran, because I was going into something, which, it's kind of detached from what we've been talking about so far. But I was going into the whole agreement or the alliance that's made between China, Russia, India, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And that alliance has the, what's it called? Not an abbreviation, but you know what it is, to where like you take the beginning of each word and they all make a word, but it's called CRINC. They have an alliance that's made with one another, and amongst this alliance, it's like a military assistance between these 4 different countries where, Russia, and this is primarily for the Ukraine war, but North Korea supplies artillery shells and missiles and 11,000 troops for Russia. So there are North Korean troops on the ground helping Russia in their fight against Ukraine. Iran is providing combat drones and missiles. China is delivering dual-use tech, machine tools and different drone parts to sustain Russia's military production. From Russia, Russia is sending North Korea different conventional military tech. They're sending them equipment for ICBMs, for advanced aircraft. Russia is sending Iran attack helicopters, radar systems, combat aircraft. And there's different things being sent between Iran to Russia, to North Korea, to China. China is sending things to Iran. All these different countries are in cahoots with one another. And we see that there's direct conflict being made between Israel and Iran, America and Iran. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, as we get to World War III, it's not like it's just gonna be something that just happens for no reason. There's gonna be agreements being made. There's gonna be provisions being made. There's gonna be things set up where countries are gonna be on certain sides. And once things pop off, it's gonna be, everything is gonna be manifest, so to speak. We're gonna see who's on what side. And right now, we're seeing that these countries, the same way that NATO got their alliances, the same way that the US got their alliances with these different countries, sending them equipment, sending equipment to Ukraine, to Israel. Well, these countries are sending equipment to each other, helping each other out, And it's showing why, because they're in wartime and they're getting ready for, even greater war efforts. Now I want to get one more article that I came across, which is showing that these countries around the world are getting into a wartime mindset. We're gonna go, this is the People's Voice.tv, which says France orders hospitals to be ready for war by March 20. All right, Salaki, it says France orders hospitals to be ready for war by March 2026. Now, France is a part of NATO, and it says, when you read, it says, French hospitals have been instructed by the country's Ministry of Health to be prepared for war in Europe next year. Now, why would they say let's read on. It says, France has been told to prepare its health system for a scenario in which it may have to treat thousands of soldiers returning from combat. And what the country's health minister says is just a precautionary measure. But why would, the Ministry of Health be like, hey, by next year, have these places ready to treat thousands of soldiers, if they don't think that it's a very real possibility that war will pop off? Because, hey, like I said, France is a part of NATO, and you have NATO countries getting into it with these opposing forces. And amongst NATO, if one country goes to war, that means all of NATO is going to war. So this is showing even more that, even with countries like that, America and Russia, they're more in a offensive mind. They're more in a, I'm about to show my strength, I'm not backing down. But you have the NATO countries that are allied with America, to where they're making provisions. They're not necessarily in an offensive mind, but they're getting ready because they know that their allies are ready to go to war. They know that their allies are pushing things to get to that World War III state. So that's why France is like, man, hey, let's just prepare because we might have to jump in soon. It says, let's see, let's jump down. It says, the ministry said France's hospital should be aware of the limitations in wartime and be ready to care for both French and foreign soldiers in the event of a major conflict. It said hospitals should be prepared to treat thousands of soldiers within a period of 10 to 180 days. It says a government spokesperson told Euronews that the health ministry's job is to prepare for a wide range of threats that the healthcare system could face. So yeah, that's basically the point in this article. I want to grab one more scripture before we close it out. We're going to get Joel chapter 3, verse 9, which says, proclaim ye this amongst the Gentiles. Prepare war, wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. So this right here, when it comes to prophecy, that's the will of the Lord. That's the Lord's plan. And no prophecy, is going to fall short and not come to pass. When we read Isaiah chapter 55, verse 11, what does it say? It says, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. So what we're just reading here in Joel 3 and 9, when it says to prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let the men of war draw near. What that's speaking about is, hey, get ready. Get your soldiers ready, start preparing. And get your hospitals ready, start preparing. Let your, if you're in a mindset of peace, it says beat your plowshares into swords. A plowshare is a farming tool. But if you got to beat your farming tool into a sword, that's representative of your peace times being turned into wartime. It says, let the weak say, I am strong. What's that speaking about? That's speaking about these different countries that are, smaller in the sense of military capability. They're getting ICBM technology. They're getting assistance from these bigger countries such as America, such as Russia, and they're getting sent better, military technology, because they're going to be looped into this war as well. It says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. And thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen. So I had to come back. It says, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Now, the valley of Jehoshaphat is over there in the Middle East, about in Saudi Arabia, next to the Persian Gulf. And, that's where all these different countries that we've been talking about, all these countries are going to send their troops there in the Valley of Jehoshaphat to fight, and that's why the Lord is saying he's going to judge all the heathen around about. All the military men are going to be judged. They're going to be destroyed in that war. Now, when we read about Armageddon, when we read about World War III, that's going to be a peak of it when all them troops are sent there. But that's, we can even link that with the least of the flock drawing them out. Because where is Israel going to be drawing all these troops and all these military men to? Like we spoke about, over there to that land, over there to the Middle East, the Levant. And when all the military men are over there, like I spoke about, that's where, there's going to be a mass death of them, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I know I was, all over the place, but there's, just different things going on, different articles I've been reading, and just, the Spirit was on me to just go into how, these different places around the world, these different leaders, they're getting ready for war. They're in a warlike mindset. The Lord is going to fulfill his will. And the way that he's doing it is getting them in the spirit to fight, So, again, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahawakak. I want to give double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS, and a salutation unto the elect.